And welcome back to St. Thomas Aquinas for Everyone. I'm Dave Palmer, continuing now part 4 on the Passions. Before we get to that, though, I just want to tell you a little tidbit about St. Thomas Aquinas that you may not remember. Early on in one of the first few videos that we did, I talked about Thomas as a mystic. Okay, Thomas was not just this egghead philosopher and theologian, although he's a great theologian, a great philosopher. He also was a mystic, and he had some very, very powerful encounters with the Lord. In fact, that's what caused him to stop writing the Summa. Eventually, at the end of his life, he stopped writing the Summa because he did have a mystical experience. He was found levitating by some of his friends. And so, as you study the Summa, remember, I've always mentioned this is about coming to know God. And Thomas not only taught about it, but he lived it. Okay, he has said that he learned more about God by placing his head up against the tabernacle than by anything he had ever read. So as you learn these lessons, remember the whole purpose is to come to know the living God through our human life experiences, day-to-day experiences. And that's really what it's all about. All right, so now we move on to the passions. And I mentioned in the last video that the passions are not good or bad in and of themselves from a moral standpoint, but they are part of human nature, and human nature is good, so that means the passions are good and are meant to be directed to our final end, which is union with God, right? Because we all have a spark of deity in us. Okay, so we go on now. This lesson is going to be talking about some of the potential negatives of the passions. And we know what those can be because we all have that battle every day with our passions and whether they conform to reason. So we'll move right on to it. And Thomas asks in this article 7 of question 31 whether any pleasure is unnatural. All right, that's a very, very pertinent question in our culture today. Is everything that people feel okay? Can they, relativism would say, hey, if you have your morality, I have morality. So this is a very pertinent question, even in the 21st century. Here's kind of a symbol of that. There are some people that take pleasure in eating dirt. Okay, there's a name for these people, but they like eating dirt. Okay, is eating dirt natural? Is it good for our body? Does it help our body to thrive? I'm no doctor or scientist, but I'm guessing the answer to that is no. And so I don't think naturally people should eat dirt, but some people are still attracted to it, and so they think it's good. All right, Thomas says, we speak of that as being natural, which is in accord with nature. Okay, a very, very important word in Thomistic philosophy is nature. What does that mean? Now, in man, nature can be taken in two ways. First, inasmuch as intellect and reason is the principal part of man's nature, since in respect thereof, he has his own specific nature. Okay, we have a nature as human beings. Okay, and that means certain things. There's certain operations that are part of us, and we all share it, like having an intellectual mind, an intellect, and a will, right? And in a sense, those pleasures may be called natural to man, which are derived from things pertaining to man in respect of his reason. Okay, we are people with reason, as I just mentioned. Secondly, nature in man may be taken as contrasted with reason, and in denoting that which is common to man and other animals, especially that part of man which does not obey reason. Okay, overeating, over drinking, oversleeping. This is part of our sensitive nature, as we talked about. Under each kind of pleasures, we find some that are not natural, speaking absolutely. Okay, here's a man. All right, so the key to all of this is that he represents all of us. Okay, as a person, our goal is to come to know God. So we have to look at every part of the human person and say, is this helping us to come to know God, or is it hindering us? And that's where the passions have to be analyzed as being in accord with reason or not in accord with reason. Okay, under each kind of pleasure we find some that are not natural, speaking absolutely, and yet co-natural in some respect, for it happens in an individual that some one of the natural principles of the species is corrupted. Okay, so that something which is contrary to the specific nature becomes accidentally natural to this individual. So Thomas is acknowledging that there are some people that have desires that are not natural to human beings overall, like eating dirt or things like that, right? Okay, so that's that, and let me move on. And why did I show a picture of a cat? Um, cats lick themselves to clean themselves. Okay, this is in their nature. Okay, if we did that, that would be really weird. Okay, that would be not be natural. So what is natural to a cat is not natural to a human being. We shower, we have water that's poured over us, right? We don't lick ourselves. Okay, but that's just one example, and there are many others of things that are natural to some people, but not to others. Okay, here's a picture of somebody overeating French fries. Okay, it's natural to eat, but it's not proper to eat too much. So in this sense, what he's doing is natural, unlike licking ourselves would not be natural at all, but it's inordinate to eat too much. And then here's our buddy, the dirt eater, and of course that is not natural to eat dirt because it's not good for our bodies. So there are ways of figuring that out, right? All right, consequently, it happens that something which is not natural to man, either in regard to reason or in regard to the preservation of the body, becomes co-natural to this individual man. Okay, I think for the 13th century, Thomas is ahead of himself. He's not saying everybody's exactly alike and we all have the same desires. He's saying that some people do, for whatever reason, have things that are different, right? On account, but here's what he says, it's on account of some corruption of nature in him. Okay, and this corruption may be either on the part of the body from some ailment. All right, so for example, Thomas would have said that a blind person has a corruption in nature because it's not natural to not have eyesight. Doesn't mean the blind person's bad, it just means that there's something about his specific nature that is lacking in the overall nature. Okay, that's what Thomas would have said. And this corruption may be either on the part of the body from some ailment, thus to a man suffering from fever, sweet things seem bitter, and vice versa, or from an evil temperament, thus some taking pleasure in eating earth and coals and the like, or on the part of the soul, thus from custom, some take pleasure in cannibalism. Okay, that's a little weird, but these are the examples that Thomas uses, or in the unnatural intercourse of man and beast. So he's talking about bestiality here, or other such things which are not in accord with human nature. So Thomas is recognizing, okay, here's another example. This is a child that's born without legs. Okay, this is obviously not natural to be born without legs. It doesn't mean this child isn't a wonderful, beautiful child of God, but it would be unnatural to not have legs. And Thomas is acknowledging that in this individual case, this is a corruption. And I think everybody would agree that it's not natural not to have legs or arms or other parts of the bodies or blindness. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, the last article we'll learn about today is whether pleasure hinders the use of reason. Okay, we all like pleasure. Okay, here's a man and his wife or girlfriend going out for a date, having wine and good food and that kind of stuff. And Thomas is saying, okay, these are good things, right? But does it hinder the use of reason? Okay, and I think that's very interesting what he says. Okay, on the other hand, bodily pleasures hinder the use of reason in three ways. First, by distracting the reason, because we attend much to that which pleases us. Now, when the attention is firmly fixed on one thing, it is either weakened in respect to the other things, or it is entirely withdrawn from them. How often do you think about food? I think about food all the time. The pleasure of food. You're thinking about your next meal or your nap or sleeping, or you can have a glass of wine in the evening, right? Well, when you're thinking about that, that means you can't be thinking about other things. Okay, so he's not saying that you shouldn't think about those things, but that it does hinder the reason from being focused on other things like God, right? Okay. Okay, so and thus if the bodily pleasures be great, either it entirely hinders the use of reason by concentrating the man's attention on itself, or else it hinders it considerably, okay? Secondly, by being contrary to reason, because some pleasures, especially those that are in excess, are contrary to the order of reason, okay? And I'm just going to kind of paint with a broad brush right here and talk about perversity. There are a lot of things that the church teaches, especially when it comes to sexuality, that are perverse and not natural, not in accord with procreation, not in accord with human nature, okay? And that doesn't mean that some people don't have a corruption in nature that Thomas talks about, but there are perversities, okay? Thirdly, by fettering the reason, insofar as bodily pleasure is followed by a certain alteration in the body, greater even in the other passions, in proportion as the appetite is more vehemently affected towards a present than towards an absent thing. Now, such bodily disturbances hinder the use of reason, as may be seen in the case of drunkards, in whom the use of reason is fettered or hindered. Okay, so we got the drunkard here. The guy's at the bar drinking too much, he's drunk. Obviously, that is affecting his reason. It's also, as Thomas is going to say later on in the Summa, is going to lead to other sins, because we all know that a drunk person tends to get lax on other things, and the more sins come from that. All right, that's it. Passions number 4. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Leave comments, like, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff, and let me know, is this making sense to you? Are you enjoying it? Have you watched all the videos? If you're just joining right now, go back and watch all the others. Okay, binge on St. Thomas Aquinas, because you want to get caught up, because this does build upon itself. All right. Okay, that does it. Thanks so much for watching. This is St. Thomas Aquinas Forever for everyone, and we are going through the entire Summa Theologia. All right, one video at a time. God bless you. Thanks for watching.